Welcome back to the AI Driven Marketer, where we're helping marketers master AI to do more, do better, and overcome the overwhelm that is AI right now. Today, I'm talking to Andre Yee, the founder of Tiga AI and formerly the CEO of Triblio, and was an executive at Eloqua. Andre has been dealing a lot with AI, and we had a fascinating conversation before this call where we were discovering, like, I was just sharing some things that I've been learning about AI, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we were dealing with that back in August or back in September." And with his marketing automation background, I'm excited to explore what he thinks the future of AI is. So, Andre, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan, thanks so much for having me. I look forward to the conversation. Should be fun.
To kind of kick it off and to introduce you to the audience, tell me a little bit more about your background with Eloqua and then Triblio.
I've been in sales and marketing tech for roughly about 17 years. It started with my time at Eloqua. I was not a founder, but I was reasonably early into the company. We grew the company and it was really successful company, a great team, and we ended up growing really fast. Did an IPO. And then we were acquired by Oracle for just under $1 billion. Great exit. And then a lot of my fellow executives, they were trying to find the next Eloqua. I had the audacity, I guess you would call it, to try to build the next Eloqua. I set off to start a company called Triblio, and it's an account-based marketing platform. And we had a great run and actually reasonably successful. We exited to a company called IDG, International Data Group, in June of 2020. And then I stayed with IDG for about 2.5 years. And around the beginning of last year, I left to start Tiga AI.
What were some of the big breakthroughs you saw in between those two that were like big milestones for you in those companies?
You mean between Eloqua and Triblio?
Triblio. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you know the the biggest thing during the time when I was at Eloqua, I think the idea of marketing automation was still new. Everyone was still trying to figure out how to actually do a nurture campaign, how to do lead scoring. I mean, we're talking things that are very basic and
Yeah.
commonplace now were
Yep.
new, right? I think the difference when I started Triblio was the idea of marketing automation was set, having a sort of system of record for your leads that was in context that was clear. But maybe what was still missing was this idea of how do you target an account, how do you actually reach the buyers in those accounts specifically.
Right. I remember the days of early days of marketing automation. I even started in B2C and I was using MailChimp's marketing automation back in the day.
Right.
Maybe it was like 2010. And you could do drip sequences in there, but they had some integrations that allowed me to like do sequences that were based on people's zip code, interestingly, and time it based on that to events we were doing, and then kick off automated text messaging. And it was a crazy system, and it was like way kind of ahead of its time before it was like easy to do that stuff. Now it's like easy to set up text messaging and base it off zip codes if they're in a proximity of events. But man, it was hard to rig those things back then, and it did take a long time for the market to catch up because people were thinking drip sequences. Honestly, I find that at least half the companies I ever work with on marketing automation stuff, they still think of marketing automation as just email drip sequences.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I
about it.
mean,
I'm like, we could do more than that. We can automate like way more, like
yeah.
put people down campaigns with these more complex if thens and
And
like
there's also
auto segments.
a lot more data out there today,
Yeah.
and arguably the challenge today is how do you make sense of that data and
Yeah.
actually reach the buyer. So
The ABM front's hard is a hard one though. So I always handled it a little bit more B2C where it's like based on a contact record. You start talking about account records and it's hard to think about like how you automate it for the account level, right? Like that's why the ABM software was so important because you could at least like auto advertise to people at an account level based on what maybe one or two people had been doing
yeah.
within a campaign and what they were downloading, and all of a sudden you could activate ads across the whole account or whole IP address or something like that. So I remember those were exciting times too.
Yeah, I think the big idea in ABM is really this, that in B2B, it's not a single buyer, it's a buying group. And the question is, how do you market to the buying group? How do you personalize messaging to each member of the buying group? And I think that's the big idea, that if you want to think of the shift between marketing automation with Eloqua or Marketo and then the ABM players, I think that's the primary sort of difference.
What are some of the lessons you learned from those two companies that you're bringing with you to Tiga?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I would say this. I think the if you look at what's happened in the market, right? I always think at Eloqua it was, and even certainly at Eloqua, the idea of demand creation and demand capture was sort of conflated. So I think that's been happening for the last 15 years. Like, as marketers, marketing community often conflates demand creation and demand capture. And I think what's becoming more apparent now is that you actually have to think differently about each of those. Because what I see in the market is that the idea of this really long nurture is 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 over, right? People don't need to be nurtured for a long time, because when they're ready to buy, they look up whatever they need and they just get on with it. So I think when I say there's this conflation of demand creation and demand capture, what I mean is that I think demand creation is all the stuff you're doing with the podcast and content and that kind of thing, building your brand. So I think there's a return in marketing to focus on pure demand creation. How do we go about really creating demand, getting our brand out there, helping people understand who we are and our proposition? And then the demand captures part is, how do you find the people that are in market for what you want as efficiently as possible, reach them as effectively as possible, and then do it, as cheaply as possible, right? So I think there's this clear definition. I think we're entering in an age where there's clear definition between demand creation and demand capture.
I find companies love demand capture, but it's a struggle to find companies that want to invest in true demand creation because it's just harder to measure. Like, how do you know you're influencing people? How do you know you're creating demand? Because on what you
Yeah,
can find in the best way I know how is like, are you putting out content? Are your ideal buyers showing up in the comment every once in a while and asking interesting questions based on ideas that aren't directly related to your product? Maybe because you're teaching them how to think about a problem more than just tell them about your solution. It's like it's more of a broader approach or framework or method or something like that.
yeah. I was
And of course,
just
if you're reaching more and you're getting more conversation going, it's safe to assume you're generating more command, but more demand, but it's not always easy to measure exactly how much.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think you're spot on when you say it's hard to get companies to sort of pay attention and invest in it. I just listened to something by Chris Walker, Refine Labs, and he was saying how 80% of the spend, especially when you think of headcount spend as well as program spend together, 80% of the spend is all about demand capture, right? So I think there's more money there. That's not to say demand creation is not important, but there's a lot of attention being paid to how do you find people that are in market or have the potential, show the potential for being currently in market, and then actually you know, uh, reaching them effectively. And that's actually part of what, really a big part of what we do with Tiga AI. So we're using generative AI to autonomously discover those signals of buyer interest and then execute an outbound motion.
Okay, so let's transition to talking about Tiga. Like, tell me exactly what you're doing, what the play is there, how it's working.
Yeah, as I was saying, I think the opportunity as I saw it, and the reason I'm in this, we chose to focus on this, is that I think there's a big challenge in demand capture of sort of finding true buyer interest signals, right? I sometimes hesitate to call it buyer intent because I think we over-index on that phrase.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I think it's really buyer interest, right? And what I noticed was a lot of the most meaningful buyer interest signals are are signals that are custom to your business, not necessarily unique to your business, but they're custom to your business. Here's what I mean by that. here's a signal that everyone, a very commonplace signal, right? Like, for instance, company receives funding. They then get reached out to by every single company
Yeah.
that's trying to
Yeah. Yeah.
sell them something. That's a
Yeah.
signal. It's a
Yeah.
legitimate signal. It's a very common signal. It's not one that's particular to your business. Now, let's say you're a managed security services company, right? A more meaningful signal is not that one of your prospects receive funding. A more meaningful signal might be they're hiring for security professionals, and that's a good signal because they have a need, and you want to hit them up because they might actually choose to not actually hire them, but actually use your actually outsource the security management to your firm, right? So that's a custom buying signal that's particular to your business if you're a managed service security service provider. That what I've discovered is that most of the really meaningful buyer interest signals are custom, and they are manually derived, meaning today, until this point, I think humans go and peruse the web, they research documents, they look for these signals, they look for who's hiring, and then they execute an outbound motion to those companies, right? So part of what we're doing is we're using generative AI to help discover those signals and to autonomously execute the outbound motion.
Yeah. What are some of the other signals, common signals? So hiring signals, I've seen that before. Like I'm like even on Crunchbase, you can filter based on key hires as
Hmm.
a to find companies who have hired a CMO or a
Yeah,
CTO
yeah,
or something like that
yeah.
recently. What are some other signals you're looking at?
Well, to that point, if I can just, I'll jump in with more signals. If I can just make a point, one of the interesting things about, like, as you said, you see on Crunchbase, you can do that. I think one of the great powers of generative AI is the ability to decipher and derive signals from unstructured content, right? When
Yeah.
you're looking at Crunchbase or Zoom Info and they say, hey, here's a new executive hire, that's a structured data element. What you can do with generative AI and what Tiga can do is we can identify signals through unstructured data, just through content. And what that means is you can get a signal in a more timely way. It's real time based on an announcement, and you can also now find all kinds of signals. Now, so to your point, what are the signals would be custom signals or interesting signals? Certainly, when one that people have started to do more of is when your champion or a power user or a sponsor moves from the current company, to a new company, right? So if you have an existing client and they have users moving to a new company, that's an extremely strong signal, assuming that you've served them well. And then, yeah, a few others based on announcements of what you know if you're a selling, say, a project management tool, you might want to reach out to someone when they have a new product announcement or project announcement. One in particular, I was talking to a prospect, and he said, we sell CRMs to small retailers. And he said, I like to know when small retailers announce new store openings. Well, you can't buy that data anyway. You literally have to go and read and look for and read announcements and derive that, right? So that's what I mean when I say some of the most meaningful signals for your business are really signals that are custom. They're particular to your business, right? And I think that's a real opportunity that I think we haven't explored as a market.
So that's what Tiga does is essentially like scraping the net daily for the signals that are important for your business. Let's use your last example. Is that what
Yeah.
it would be? It could be trained to look for that.
Well, the net is a big place, so it doesn't
Yeah.
scrape the entire net randomly, right? What it does is, you instruct it specific the kind of signals you want. You define a target account list. The target account list can be in the thousands, it can be in hundreds, it can be in thousands, and it looks for signals within that pool
Interesting.
of
So it
accounts.
it finds their website, their blog, their social feeds, and is
Hmm.
just paying attention to those so that you don't have to be manually checking them because that's what you would have had to do
Yeah,
otherwise.
exactly.
You would have
That's
had to
how.
pull up all your, if you're a sales rep, you would have had to pull up all your accounts every day on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And I mean, that's probably the best way to do it now is Sales Navigator and just creating a custom feed of your account to see what the heck your accounts are talking
Yeah,
about.
but that's
But that
still a
was
lot of
dirty and it was
manual.
messy.
Yeah, exactly,
Not bad for
exactly.
social selling, but as far as looking for intent, mm,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's a big challenge that I use Navigator. I love Sales Navigator, but it's not necessarily focused on that. It's and so yeah, that's what we do, and we do it autonomously. And meaning you tell it the kind of signals it'll keep looking, so you don't have to worry. It's almost like that's why I say it's an AI assistant to help you with this idea of signal based prospecting because it will autonomously do that once you've instructed it to do that. You don't have to check back. If something happens, it'll let Tiga will let you know and prepare a response or prepare an outbound motion for you. So
it's kind of interesting. So you take every you're pulling, you have to make some kind of web scraper that automatically creates your own internal feed for your Tiga's database. And then every time it updates, you have to run it through AI and to be like, hey, check this update. Does this fit one of the criteria we're looking for? Yes or no. And then if it's a yes, it flags it, sends it to a human.
you're saying how do we work?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we basically will intelligently mine information across. And I don't use the word scrape only because the thing we do is we look on the web, we look on social channels, but we also look on long form content, right? So it's not exactly scraping. We can go into a PDF, like an SEC document. We can go into analyst research financial analyst documents, so long as they're public and accessible. Really, we can go anywhere and look at long form documents of any type. We it's coming, not yet, but you can even actually go do deep research on podcast conversations. So, for instance, if you know an executive is on a podcast, you might want to just mine it for some keywords or interesting comments on something that's relevant to what you're selling.
Yeah. That's huge. I've certainly done that for key accounts before, trying to usually just try to bring them into something like Cast Magic and pull it in there to see if I can unearth anything interesting. I think people don't do it enough because it's hard to, I mean, podcast content's it's a lot of content
It's
to mine
yeah.
through. So that's that's really helpful because they're out there talking all the time, saying all kinds of stuff. And that's honestly where a lot of the real content comes from because they get more vulnerable on podcasts and interviews and stuff that's on YouTube too,
Yeah.
versus the Twitter press release
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. And
company's probably
especially,
putting
yeah,
out, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I think there's a lot of potential there. Yeah, for sure.
What are you looking forward to coming? So your product, is it in beta or is it out and currently usable?
It's out. It's in what we call commercial beta, right? And yeah, we have about a dozen clients looking for more. We're selective, but we want to work with people who want to work with us, right? And I know it sounds sort of obvious, but what I mean by that is we do with when it comes to AI and sales, there are a lot of tire kickers, and right now we're not in a position to sort of like entertain tire kickers. So we do want to work with people that want to commit at least some amount of time to it and work with us. But we're excited because I think fundamentally, I think generative AI is a game changer for sales. A lot of people talk about chat gpt being the iphone moment for ai. That's true. It came into mainstream. Everyone's sort of like, wow, I can't believe that an ai can do this. But I think of generative ai more generally as sort of this impact event for sales teams, and I think the dust is still settling on how sales teams will use ai to effectively. But I think what you're going to find, and it'll take. In fairness, I'd like to say the dust will settle quickly, but it'll probably take 3+ years for the dust to settle on how to leverage AI effectively. I think there'll be a lot of
For
players. We
sure.
want to be one of those. But when the dust settles,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Dan, I think there are only going to be two types of organizations. They're going to be those that invested time and actually like figured it out, and they won't just be 30% better. They'll be 3x better. And then there'll be those that don't, and they'll be lagging behind, and some of them will may go extinct, right? I think that's what I mean when I say it's a defining impact event for sales teams. It will take time for the dust to settle, but to me, it's almost inevitable.
Yeah, that's happened to me in December when I was like, okay, like the writing is so clear on the wall to me that this is going to take over everything,
Yeah,
that I have to do everything I can to learn everything I possibly can about this right now. And
I
now that
think
I've put in some reps, I'm like, this isn't that hard to learn. It's way easier to learn how to optimize AI than it is to code. And I know how to program websites at least, or at least HTML, CSS, and I'm familiar with object oriented code. But still, like
but
AI, you almost have to approach it the same way with that engineering mindset. I posted
yeah.
about it this morning on LinkedIn. I'm like, you guys, you're all saying prompt engineering, but there's a big difference between prompting and prompt engineering. The difference
Well,
between them is like you almost have to look at it like a software engineer looks at it. What are the inputs and what do we want the outputs to be? And how do we engineer the process in order to get a certain type of input to give us clear and consistent outputs? Which that process is much different than just throwing a few prompts at AI.
yeah,
But this is the skill set that's emerging for those who know have been playing with it, is learning how to really engineer it to really essentially automate more complex tasks that
yeah,
weren't possible before.
yeah. And I think, Dan, you're probably two clicks ahead of most of the marketing, sort of like mainstream. And beyond that, I think you are two or three clicks easily ahead in terms of technical ability, right? And so I think you have this rare blend of technical ability and marketing know-how. I think that to bring most marketers into this world of generative AI for sales, they cannot be prompt engineers, right? They cannot be to get the best out of it. And so you're an exception in a lot of ways. Like the mainstream.
You don't think most people can learn it, or just most people maybe just don't have the hunger to want to learn it,
Yeah, if you're asking, do they have the aptitude to learn it, is different from whether or not they
the
actually
desire, right?
will.
Yeah,
Well, the desire and also, people are busy, right? Like, they're busy, they're under pressure, they'll they've got targets to hit. It's not foremost in their minds, right? I mean, that's the conviction that you asked, like what led us to Tiga AI. That was part of the conviction. We think of ChatGPT, very powerful, by the way, huge respect for what ChatGPT is, but we think of it as sort of, I think I've said this before, even in our last call. I've talked about it in terms of like it's the Excel of generative AI. You can do anything with it, right? You can do a ton of different things. But if you think about Excel, like, and I think it's a really good analogy, because if you think of
it's
Excel,
it's an awesome analogy.
eventually, right? Like when Excel first came out, people used it to manage their home budget. They used it for financial planning in their companies. They used it to plan their vacation, right? But guess what? Eventually, there was a new crop of purpose-built applications for you to manage your home finances, which is a different application from what you use to run your business, from what you know. So I think that's going to happen. And when I say not everyone's going to be a prompt engineer, what I mean by that is I don't think that's the only quote unquote barrier. I think it's not just about prompt engineering. We think that there will be a second crop and an emerging crop of purpose built AIs. We'd like to think we're one of them that's getting it right. And in this next crop, you don't have to be a prompt engineer, but the other thing is it will be purpose built for sort of a day in the life of your workflow, right? What do you do in your particular role? So that's what I mean when I say ChatGPT is kind of like the Excel of generative AI. You can use it for anything, right? And which is
Yeah.
very, very powerful, but not optimized for your role.
So challenge me on this. The reason why I think people need to learn how to essentially do this prompt engineering is because Sam Altman predicts that like 95% of marketers were replaced by AI in some time
Oh
period.
wow.
I don't know when, but it was a big number. I mean, there's 400,000 marketers in the US alone. So you're talking about like a mass, like this is a huge employer of people. We're going to lose a ton of jobs. I'm like, okay, maybe he's wrong. Maybe it's only 60% lose their jobs. and there'll be new jobs created. Let's say it's 20%.
Mm.
We're still going to lose 40%. And the new
No.
jobs are created will be the people who know how to engineer, because they're going to be frontline. All the frontline people are going to be managing their AI teams, all these agents. But that's managing it's going to look a lot like prompt engineering. That's why I'm
Yeah.
like, the writing to me on the wall is like, well, it's kind of like that wonderful movie Hidden Figures, where all these computers, before they were machines, were people doing the math for the NASA launch. A bunch of African American women. If you haven't seen the movie, it's wonderful.
Mm.
And then they roll in this IBM machine, and the head, like the supervisor of the computers, is like, "What is this?" Well, I guess I'm gonna have to learn how to run the machine. And she teaches all the computers how to run the machine. So when they finally learn how to turn the machine on, well, her and her team are the ones who know how to use it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like that next thing. I'm like, well,
I
AI
yeah.
is the next thing. We got to learn it. Otherwise, we're going to be replaced by it.
I think that's a very fair statement. I think though, when you look at how that'll play out, I think it'll probably mean the greatest effect is in the area of sort of marketing ops. So I think if you're in marketing ops, you need to know this stuff, because then there's going to be a set of tools, and you're in the ops side. If you're a salesperson, you know, you're probably not going to be doing prompt engineering. You're probably going to have an AI like Tiga that is set up to do stuff for you, right? That's the whole idea of having an assistant. It's already been pre-instructed and it knows. But there will be a team of ops folks, or a ops person behind Tiga that's setting it up for the entire organization, right? And so and depending on the different roles, some people think SDRs are vulnerable, as a role. I think that there's a lot of SDR work that can be automated. So it's not. I don't think of it as the demise of SDR. I think of it as elevating the role of the SDR to a more meaningful role, and it may turn out that we will need fewer of them, but the ones that are going to be better and more effective, and simply it'll simply be a better sort of role, better job for the folks that want to pursue being an SDR.
My one hope against Sam Altman's prediction that 95% of marketers are going to lose their job is that marketing and sales, to a large degree too, are black holes. Like, you can always invest more, staff more, and throw more time and effort and talent into marketing, and you'll never fill it.
Mm,
I had
yeah,
an ex- I had my boss tell me that one day, because I was the marketing guy asking for more budget. He's like, "Look, I could give the whole company budget to marketing, and you guys would spend it."
yeah.
Because it's a black hole. You'll never fill it. So I'm like, if that's true, then maybe we all keep our jobs, and it just changes dramatically over the next year. But who knows?
It's kind of interesting, right? Because Sam Altman saying that, I think it's interesting because there is a difference between, like, I have a product engineering background. So I would say if that's true of marketing, it's probably also doubly true of software developers. But I think actually in sales and marketing, there's one dimension that makes it not as easy to replace. I'm not saying there won't be a need for fewer, but it's not easy to replace. And part of it is that on the other side, you're trying to reach humans, and it's really difficult to understand what a human will respond to, because it's not just one thing. It changes over time, right? It changes over time, and so I think it's not maybe quite as easy as Sam Altman is making it out to be. But
Maybe I'm even just some of the stuff I'm working on, like, replaced a lot of people already. Like, even 3 years ago, I was working for Sweetfish, a podcast agency,
mm,
and we were looking at the innovator's dilemma, because like Sweetfish was the B2B podcast agency ever. And we're like, well, who's going to put us out of business? And we looked at the competition. We looked at a number of different factors, and we realized, I'm like, oh, who's going to put us out of business is going to be SaaS.
mm,
SaaS is going to put us out of business, because we're taking the time to edit the episode and turn it into all the different kinds of written content and other mixed media. And I'm like, eventually it's not going to be another service provider that's going to replace us, provided we don't screw up somewhere royally.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
going we're going to be undercut by tech. And that's
yeah.
exactly, I mean, Sweetfish has had to go up market, which is again, the innovator dilemma will eventually catch up to that too, but that's the right move for them to make. I decided to leave and go in straight into the tech. I'm like, well, then I'm just going to master the tech. So I'm looking at this AI stuff that's going on now because it's clearly like as a team of one, I can do what took like a team of 3 or 4 or 5 at Sweetfish. Used to take them 2 weeks. I can do in about 90 minutes now with just current AI tech. Maybe it's not quite to the degree that they were doing it, but it's pretty dang close.
No, you're absolutely right. I think in that respect, that is an almost undeniable effect of AI, right? It's like the thing that you were talking about when you said SaaS. That's I guess you almost have to think of like it's like a pyramid, right? And
Yep.
so at the bottom, the low value work, so to speak, some of that got automated by just regular SaaS applications. And then, but I think generative AI just pushes it up the
Yep.
pyramid a lot more aggressively. And so the unique part that humans fill starts to become the very apex of the pyramid and getting smaller all the time.
Yep.
So I think some of that is inevitable. But I also think of the opportunities it opens up then, like for really creative, motivated people like yourself. Like think about it. I think in the future is a future where a 10-person company will operate like, a 50, 100-person company today, right? That's what it's going to look like in the future. Sort
That's
of you
that's another Sam Altman prediction that I'm probably going to start a whole new segment to this show on.
have.
He because he predicts it, and I'm like, if that's true, it's an interesting concept to at least talk about. Is the coming of a billion dollar a unicorn company that's just solopreneur with maybe
Yeah,
like an assistant.
yeah,
AI will make it possible because there's already like companies in the tens of millions that are just one person, right? Because they can leverage content and code, which is very scalable.
yep,
But AI will make it possible to hit a billion.
yeah.
And I
I
don't know
mean,
if he specified whether it was in revenue or value. Rap value would be easier. Not just that's
yeah,
not too far off already, but it's an interesting idea.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's exciting times. I think it actually, if you think about it, it opens the door for entrepreneurship in a massive way, right? One of the biggest hurdles, being an entrepreneur myself, having started companies and sold them, one of the biggest challenges is raising capital, right? Like you need capital to grow. Some people certainly have done it by bootstrapping, but a lot of companies in the space, especially if you're building a product, you need capital to grow as when you're scaling the company. And I think we've just come through an era of really, really cheap capital, and that era seems to be at least in the near and midterm over. So, but I think this, the emergence of generative AI and just AI in general, I think will just open the doors for entrepreneurship where if you can truly run with a much, much smaller footprint of human full-time employees. I mean, now a lot of more companies, a lot more people can pursue their dreams without having to be like raise, $10 million in a seed round or a Series A round. So
Which is
I
a
think
great
that's
thing because once you raise that money, expectations
yeah,
cause you to overinvest in ways that aren't necessarily healthy.
yeah,
Hence
yeah,
the companies like like just striving for that demand capture versus demand creation, right?
yeah,
Is kind of driven by this. We need more leads this quarter, and we can't afford to put it
exactly.
off till next year when the people that aren't in market now could be in market then.
Cheap capital, ultimately in the market leads to inefficiency, right? Because you can deploy capital to capture clients even when they don't break even for 2 or 3 years. Like it's still because capital is cheap. When we said earlier that era is over, at least in the near and midterm, I think it's healthier for the economy, and it's healthier for the startup world. And I think what's interesting about that is, it really, it's less about just it's less about how good are you in raising money and more about how good is your product, how good is your service, right? And are you actually delivering value? Hyper being in a hyper growth market isn't always good when there's cheap capital because, like I said, it'll be growth at all costs and people are spending money to acquire customers that actually don't break even for 2 or 3 years, and so that's not a good model for for um, for a business.
What do you think some of the essential qualities or skills marketers and salespeople need to have in this upcoming era of AI? If not prompt engineering, what are some of the skills you're looking at?
Yeah, I think each of those are a little bit different. I think marketing will, in fact, earlier when you asked me what's the big difference between the days of Eloqua and say, you know, even now, in the days of Eloqua and let's say that first decade of marketing automation, the people that were in demand, what was in demand for marketing was, did you know how to build this demand engine, using marketing automation, right? Now that's common knowledge on, in terms of how to actually, execute a drip campaign, how to build, a demand engine. Obviously there are different people, different folks that can do it better versus most everyone. But I think in marketing, there's going to be a return back more focused on demand creation. The part that you were talking about, that you were lamenting people don't spend enough attention. I think marketing will start to focus more around demand creation, more around brand building. And why? Because everyone has the same set of tools now, right? Like everyone's running Eloqua, Marketo, or Marketo, HubSpot, right? Everyone's, knows how, has some basic handle on marketing ops, or they can outsource it to an expert. So that's not the differentiator anymore. So the differentiator is around your brand. So that demand creation piece, I think marketing will move more towards that. And then I think on the sales side, it's, do you know how to leverage the tools that are available, so that, because one of the things I see is increasingly more and more companies moving to what they call full cycle AEs. So doing without SDRs, right?
Mm.
And so because the era of cheap capital is over, you can't just hire an army of SDRs just pumping out leads for your sales team, your AEs to take on. Most companies have done the analysis during the pandemic and post-pandemic and said that the ROI doesn't make sense anymore. A lot of them are either reducing the number of SDRs, or they are going completely eliminating them and having their AEs prospect for themselves, which is what they call full cycle AEs. Well, you better know how to prospect or leverage tools that can help you do that. That's where actually part of our thesis around Tiga AI rests, is that you're going to need to do that. You're going to need help, and you need essentially an AI assistant that can take the place of an SDR and
What's your
help you.
favorite model for demand creation?
Oh, you mean what different approaches and that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, I think demand creation, I think is fascinating, because I think it's more art than science. There's science to it for sure, but
yep.
it's more art than science. I think the best way I can say is, it's not one thing. It's a portfolio of approaches, right? I think, and I think it depends on the market that you're in. You know, one of our clients is, they sell to, they're selling a tech solution to a non-tech audience. So they are brokering transportation services for, right? And so for them, they have to build their brand in this non-tech environment, right? So how the challenge is, how do they do that? They have to find where their buyers congregate. They have to be able to reach them. They have to get the right messaging to them and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I mean when I say it's more art than science. I suppose there's science in that too. But my point is that it greatly varies from business to business. And I think it requires a portfolio of approaches, not just a single thread. Like it cannot just be like podcast is all we're doing, or
Sure,
ebooks are
sure.
all that
Yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah.
doing, right?
What are you planning on for Tiga?
Right now we're in early stages, but going into the future, I think we are, in terms of demand creation, I think podcasts, right now it's me appearing as guests in podcasts like yours, which is, thank you for having me, is
Absolutely.
part of our strategy. I think tapping into sort of education is, I think, a big piece of that. So people are curious about how to actually make AI work for them in sales. So I think we're going to lean into that. The exact format, I'm not sure yet. Ebooks, do people even read that now? I'm not sure, right? Like, so that's what I mean when I say we have to figure it out. But I think for us, it's a lot of it revolves around education. And if you look at what I'm posting, then even on so even in this early stage, what am I really doing? Someone gave me some really good advice. They said, if you're entering a new market, evangelize the problem, right? And so if you look at a lot of what I'm posting about, it's not always, but I would say half of everything I post about is how I see the world in terms of the go-to-market motion and some of the problems there. Like last week, I posted about intent data, which is there's been so much hype around intent data in the last few years, but I noticed recently that people are getting disillusioned. And one of the issues is that it's overpromised. That's certainly one of the issues, underdelivered. But the other problem is that it's opaque. You don't actually know how that intent signal is derived. And then the last thing is the thing I said earlier. Most of the most meaningful buyer interest signals are actually specific to your business, right? They're actually, and a lot of intent data is far too generalized. So
Yeah, you're crushing it on LinkedIn. I just pulled open your profile. Man, that last post you posted got 39 comments. It did really good. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I've noticed an increasing disillusionment around intent data, that post you were just talking about. So
yeah, exactly. So
that's
so a
going
lot of
well.
it, yeah. So a lot of it is, and I'm so busy. I eventually want my AI to be able to do this, is actually create posts for me. But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
to be all kidding aside, I'm so busy. I can't. I'd like to post every week, but I post every other week. But I try to make it. Here's the thing. I try to make it meaningful. So I'd rather post every other week, but something I really believe in, and something that sort of like
yeah,
emanates out of my heart. I know it sounds
yeah,
strange to say
yeah, yeah, yeah,
say that when you're talking about B2B marketing and tech, but like what I post about intent, I really have thought about it for a long time. I just haven't expressed it publicly, right? And then I have other thoughts related to that. And so I'd rather do it every other week, but make it meaningful from the heart. And some of them are not gonna register that kind of interest, and then others will, right? So
yeah. I mean, there's always this like quantity versus quality debate when it comes to posting on any kind of platform. I do find that a big part of learning to build an audience is posting enough that you kind of know it resonates, and
yeah,
then figuring out how to stay on target and still post as much as you can. But that's
yeah,
hard. Is why people hire social media managers and all that kind of stuff. Or these days, it seems like companies just hire creators that have gotten good at coming up with consistent new ways to say the same thing, but in relevant ways. So,
yeah. I think what's interesting also is that this is less about directly about marketing, more about the entrepreneur journey, which you're on as well, obviously. Is you also have to know yourself, and you have to be authentic to yourself, right? Like I could force posting 3 times a week, and one, it's just not me. Like I when I post something, I really have to like really believe in it. I know it sounds so. Now, I'm not knocking. Some people can do it more often and they are prolific, but also, they're not as bothered by, some of it is they just want to, post more regularly. It's not judgment on them, but when I say
yeah,
you need to know yourself, you need to be authentic. And I guess I think in this era of with all the I think human authenticity is going to be really appreciated.
I think I don't know. There's different formats I think you could get to post more often. I think you'd have a lot of good things to say. I think one format in particular that's helpful is just reacting to other people's things. There's
True.
enough going on in the industry that giving your 2 cents on it would be helpful for a lot of people. And then you have a never like not a never ending, but you'd have a stream to be able to post every day because
Yeah, yeah.
there's well over 7 things posted around ABM, intent, AI, and tech being leveraged in sales. Good
Yes.
in good ways and in bad ways, and some things in the middle that need some commentary. It's a popular format to be able to sustain the long haul.
Yep.
But of
Yep.
course, then you got to source it, then you got to record yourself reacting to it, then you got to post it. So it's still a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it brings that authenticity back without you having to like figure out how to six ways
Create.
to regurgitate the same message too.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. I do some of that as well.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So using LinkedIn as a thought leadership platform,
Yeah.
potentially moving in. If you're finding success with guesting on podcasts, like you should probably start your own podcast. Would be good too. A good mix there. I find really helps.
So you know, you know more about this than I do. I've always felt like it's a heavy lift, you know, to do a podcast, sourcing the guests as well as you know, actually executing on it, right? Like this is your one of your superpowers, obviously, because that's, you know, you've
Yeah,
done
I
it.
guess it doesn't seem like a heavy lift to me anymore. But I remember being
Exactly.
on the outside thinking it looked like a heavy lift. That's for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
The
Because this
tools
is
these days too have made it so much easier. It's kind of like just show up into the room, talk, record, publish.
at some point I'd
Solo
like to.
episodes, make them dirty.
Yeah.
Don't edit them, just post them.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I've gone even with some of my solo episodes. I just kind of outline what I want to talk about. I talk through it, I publish it.
I think you know, kind of this is not necessarily in the space that of B2B marketing, but I think
Yeah.
Joe Rogan has made this long form podcast, sort of
Yeah.
free form, long form, unedited podcast, sort of in vogue. It's okay now to just be like, here we're just talking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, and his trick too is actually just taking clips of it too, because he records for 3 hours. But what goes
Hmm.
gangbusters are the like 5 minute clips he pulls out of it and then posts it on YouTube. Um, but he wouldn't have those clips if he didn't record 3 hours of material to find the 5 to 10 minute like super clip with, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So, and then he's the leader. So
Yeah.
once you're king, it's easy to maintain the position as long as you don't mess up royally. So he's the
Let me
podcast
ask
king.
you. Let me ask you a question. Like you know, you started this podcast on AI, mastering AI marketing. What have you seen in terms of sort of the challenges that go-to-market professionals face in adopting AI? Is it just you made a, I don't say a big deal, but you made a point about prompt engineering. Is that really the challenge, or you know, where do you see the challenge in it being sort of broadly used, or is it, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe it is broadly used and I'm not just tracking that?
I'm speaking more to directly to marketers in this show, less than companies
Hmm.
themselves. So which takes on a different flavor. So I'm talking about it more from their career standpoint and learning how to leverage it for themselves, which is
Oh, I
going to
see.
enhance their company's output because they're enhancing their output. Companies go to markets. I Right now, I don't find that there's a really killer marketing channel across the board. And we're in a kind of a down economic
Hmm.
period in the economy. So it's everybody's struggling and there's not like a clear, oh, TikTok's the new thing. Well, TikTok's matured now. So it's like there's not a clear winner. I hear rumors of like things going on with Reddit or whatever, but I'm not seeing a lot of clear case studies on like anybody crushing it in any particular channel right now to go after where leads are cheap. Because I came up like I crushed it when it came to Facebook ads when it first turned on, and I was maximizing. I was getting amazing $3-5 leads for years.
Yeah.
Like everybody else who really rode that wave, like Alex Hermosi, like literally made his career on the back of Facebook ads because they were stinking cheap, and he also did a lot of other smart stuff. Right. Right now, that's not here. So I'm like, okay, right now it's just best practices of audience growth, building an audience, thought leadership. All these things still really matter to create demand, but we have to do it smarter, and AI is the best way to do it
Hmm.
because it's hard to get enough content out there enough times and enough frequency and to be consistent enough to build an audience. So where even I struggle, even though I'm good at podcasting and even breaking it up on all the things, I still struggle to get the most out of every episode.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, that's why I'm developing a product to address that very thing. So I think AI becomes the assistant to helping you do what you know you need to be doing, but it doesn't exactly open up a new go to market method. It only
Hmm.
enhances what you're currently doing. And that's
Yeah.
because AI is not a channel. It's a tool to help improve all the other channels. So
And
did I answer your
what do you
question?
see?
I think I did.
What, do you see marketers using it? Like, what do you think the adoption is? Where do you think the adoption of AI in sort of among
Oh, it's
marketers? Where do
super
you?
low.
Yeah, that's
Like,
that's my perception as well. So that's why I was curious with you.
yeah, my perception is that hardly I have some very technical friends and they're just now signing up. Like one just messaged me last week. He's like, dude, I finally just signed up for Chat GPT Plus. I'm like, it's a good step. But it says a lot about where you were before. The fact that you didn't pay for like an AI tool yet, but now you are. So you're starting to invest into it. And somebody that's fairly like is really good with marketing ops, even though he's not a full time marketing ops person. So I'm finding that a lot of my very competent marketing friends that I know are fantastic marketers are still like custom GPTs. Like, I'm testing it, but I'm still not seeing it being that good. I'm like, well, again, that's why you have to learn the difference between prompting and prompt engineering because you have to go through. It's almost like a project in itself, but then that project of engineering a process to deliver a specific outcome starts to pay back in time saved later. So
Mm.
now that I've done it enough times, I know I'm going to be doing it more and more because the efficiencies you gain in engineering it to give you a specific output's worth it. Of
Yeah,
course, like you're saying, the tools will start doing that themselves. But for those who can't wait for the tools, custom GPTs are the best way to build them. Build your own little custom assistants to help with all the little repetitive parts of your job.
yeah, I definitely see that, and yeah, obviously we think that that needs to be this next crop of AIs that are purpose built for your role. But yeah, I think you're. That's why I said you're a couple clicks ahead of my perception is you're a couple clicks ahead of most marketers for sure. And
Well,
you're
at
also
least
more.
3 months ahead. So I only started in December. So that's what I keep telling everybody. Hey, I'm only 3 months ahead. Like, come on. Like, it's not too bad. But I don't know. I've been going hard at it for 3 months too. So I don't know. Maybe that's enough to get people to not want to join me in this journey.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in general, there are a lot of lazy people. They rather someone figure it out for them and tell them, right? So you're figuring it out for a lot of folks, and
I'll hopefully blaze a trail and help other people coming behind me make it a little bit easier for them. That's the hope, right?
yeah,
But
exactly.
even if I make it easier, it's not like they'll be far behind because it's on the adoption curve. It's really only the innovators that are really taking hold of it and doing stuff with it. Because even
Yeah.
Chris Walker is saying that it's garbage. I'm like, Chris, you should know better. You're an engineer. You
Well,
haven't played with it enough.
yeah,
Oh well.
what's interesting is, yeah, I think that the first place that people leverage is in AI and marketing is around content creation. So, in other words, help me write this blog. Help me construct an outbound email. That kind of thing. that that I think is probably the most popular use case. What we're doing, I think, is uh, different, and we certainly do that as well. We will help you write that email and all that kind of stuff. But where we think the power is that's yet untapped is the ability to sort of discover those signals, right? So being able to read like content like a human and say, "Hey, I'm looking for these signals," and I think that's going to change the way prospecting is done. It's going to make it a lot more efficient. It's going to hopefully move the needle for a lot of go-to-market teams.
Yeah,
So
it's huge. And I mean, Courtney Baker, who introduced us, I mean, her company's Knownwell's working on those kind of intent signals, but I think their first product is more focused on customers
yeah,
and customer signals so that you can stop churn before it happens, right? So,
yeah, yeah,
because it's all
exactly.
buried in Slacks and social media and all emails, and it's all buried so you can have AI. AI is really good at interpreting things and then flagging things. So, there's a bunch of use cases for that. I mean, even just it's like done some interviews with marketers who have used just Zapier and Slack to just and Google Docs in order to better streamline survey analysis
Yeah,
and insights based on surveys, or taking interviews and then breaking it up into Google Sheets and then doing analysis on it so they can what used to take somebody 40 hours a week every week is now being done in a fraction of the time, freeing up to do even more important things. So
yeah,
AI is really good at analysis. And then I think we'll start to see in the next few years it start to actually do more than analysis and giving us better reports, but actually starting to forecast and actually give us input on what we need to do, which
yeah.
is exciting. I haven't seen anybody do that well yet, but I'm like, it seems like it's capable of coaching you and consulting essentially.
Yeah, I think it's all, as we talked about, all moving up the stack of sort of like, the low value work, the mid sort of value work, and then the upper value. Like even for us, right? One of the things that we do, like one of the things if you're an SDR that you do regularly is you would, if you're trying to prospect, you want to test different messaging, right? And see which one resonates better. Like that's a no-brainer. An AI assistant like Tiga, right, should be doing that for you. And so that every slice you take, right, means that I don't think of it as we means that we need SDRs less. To me, I think we we need we may need less SDRs, but we don't need SDRs less. If you think of it this way, meaning like I think the SDRs can focus on some of the things that the AI cannot do. Think about how to reach some high end target accounts, come up with a strategy, try to figure out which channel works best, that kind of thing, experimentation. So yeah, I think you know like I think the thing you said earlier makes a lot of sense, sort of the where generative AI technology in general, but generative AI is creeping up that pyramid of sort of skills and competencies of the human, and so we're left now with that upper end of the pyramid. So
Yeah, making judgment calls, and soon it'll be doing that and creating
yeah,
original value on top of it,
exactly, exactly,
which will
exactly.
be fun. And then the one thing that makes me really excited about is I always thought really poorly of like the 4 day work week idea. Now with AI, I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally got to be a thing. This is what AI is going to free us up to do.
Well,
4 day
I
work
think
weeks
so.
mandated.
Dan, I think you said earlier what happens. Sam Altman said 95% of all marketers, will marketing jobs will disappear. Well, I think I I don't know if he's right, but what I'll say is that, as you said, even if he's half right, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
I
Yeah.
think I think that it causes an issue that we have to deal with in a society, right? Like, I think that's one of the more profound things in the middle of all this technology, and is like, what is the effect on our society? We are all used to working a lot, and we are compensated for our work, so that the harder you work, the more the more money you get. But how is that going to look 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? And when AI is taken a lot of the white collar work, at least, and
Yep.
automated that. So
I
it's
know.
going to
We're
be an
ended up in
issue.
a Matrix scenario, right? That's what
Yeah,
happened in the Matrix.
exactly,
The humans didn't have to work anymore, and just
exactly.
lived a gluttonous lifestyle. I'm like,
Yeah,
nah,
yeah.
we'll see how it goes. But Andre, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been a fun conversation, thinking about the future, thinking about what's possible right now, and what sales and marketing professionals need to be doing in order to upskill their careers.